Okay, so I would like to welcome you to our session today and to our day here. Thank you for coming, our audience, and thank you so much to the panelists. As you might know if you've seen some other videos, my name is Jill Hawthorne. I'm class of 87 and the Associate Director of Constituent Engagement and Campus Partnerships. This program is brought to you by our office, Alumni and Family Engagement. But as you know, it's made possible only by the wonderful colleagues like the folks we have today. Today, we start with a topic integral to our Pitzer community and to the life of the college, international programs and study abroad. So I would like to introduce Michael Ballagh, Associate Vice President and Study Abroad and International Programs, and Ann E. Pitzer, Director of International Programs, and Todd Sasaki, Director of International Programs. So we welcome you to go ahead if you have questions to put them in the Q&A or chat. And please remember that this session is recorded and available at our Pitzer at Home website, along with the previous sessions from this week. So Michael and Todd, you have the floor.
Thanks, Jill. Good morning, everyone. Todd and I plan on giving a pretty short, brief overview. I have a very tiny PowerPoint. I promise you it's tiny. I'm not a huge fan of PowerPoints. Just to give you a quick overview of our study abroad programs. It's actually, as I was mentioning to Todd yesterday, it's quite a prophetic time insofar as yesterday at our office meeting, it was noted that our very first student has just embarked upon her study abroad program in a country in East Asia. This is pretty profound because this is the first student we have commenced a study abroad program since March of 2020. So quite a big deal. As you can imagine, study abroad has been pretty much devastated globally the last year and a half. And that goes in large part too for inbound international student education. The good news today is that we do have, as I mentioned, I think we have 8 students currently scheduled to go abroad in the fall. And we have a very impressive group of international students coming or else here on campus. As some of you may be aware, if you're the parent of an international student, many of our international students arrived early without a vaccine, but have been vaccinated and now quarantining in an off-campus location. And hopefully many of them, Todd would have more details than this than I would, many of them will actually be able to physically step for the very first time on Pitzer's campus, many of them this weekend when their quarantine is cleared and they're fully tested. So some good news in the midst of all this heartbreak and devastation, if I can put it that way. I'm going to give a little overview and then I'm going to pass it over to Todd, who's going to focus much more on the inbound international side, which I want to assure you is of equal importance here at Pitzer College. I think there's an assumption that global education is really about our local students, whether American or not, going abroad. And certainly that's a huge aspect, but we should never minimize the importance of the inbound component of international education. So with that, let me share my screen. And again, I don't plan on, I promise this won't be a, let me see, now I need to find where it starts. I have not done a PowerPoint. I'm trying to think when was the last time I did a PowerPoint on a Zoom. Are you seeing the screen now? Is that working? You're not getting notes, I hope, at the bottom. Is the slideshow working? Todd, do you know? It's fine?
It looks okay, but there's a space for notes at the bottom, but doesn't say anything.
Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, hopefully that's better. Is that better? Okay, so I even have I even have captions here at the bottom so I can see what I'm saying. Wow, that's very cool. in a more interactive session, I would be, of course, you'd all be in front of me in a room or auditorium, and I'm a big person for constantly teaching and learning during even info sessions. So in a normal world, I'd be asking you where you think this is. Each photo that you're going to see in this slide is a photo from one of our direct run programs. Pitzer is quite unique in the liberal arts college environment in the US because we actually run programs of our own around the world. We don't not simply, but we're not reliant on third-party providers or exchanges. We also have a very vibrant study abroad program of our own. This site in front of you is the country where we first started study abroad in the 1970s, which is a clue to all. I'm not checking the chat box at the moment, but I welcome people to insert their guesses on where you think this might be. And it is not the back of Claremont. That's not Mount Baldy in the background, which you can probably guess given there's no smog either, although that's not necessarily the good thing. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more. As Jill mentioned, study abroad and international education is really a fundamental component of Pitzer's educational program, which of course has made the last year and a half, 2 years, all the more certainly distressing for our office is to see that kind of disappear overnight. But as the study abroad is not some afterthought at Pitzer College, it's a very central part of students' education. And indeed, they must demonstrate as part of their 4-year program competence in the global sphere, whether by taking a set series of courses or ideally, in my case, my hope is that they'll actually go abroad. So certainly in terms of our curriculum too, it's the curriculum that we offer in our study abroad sites very much parallels the curriculum that we have here at home in terms of learning expectations, of learning outcomes. So there's nothing in terms of the educational or intellectual goals, nothing really changes whether a student is abroad or here in Claremont. As Todd has heard this before, when I have a student email or call me from abroad who's very, very upset because they didn't realize how much work was entailed with going abroad, that's the one scenario where I frankly have a limited number of sympathy for the student. This ain't a vacation. We expect students to be working equally as hard as they would be in Claremont. And for the most case, that's very much the case. Just in terms of the bullet points, as many of you are probably aware, Pitzer students have been staggeringly, spectacularly, is that enough adjectives, successful in winning Fulbright Awards, Watson Awards. It's really become a talking point of Pitzer how successful our students are in earning these prestigious fellowships. And I do think in large part that's because of the type of learning that they engage in when they're abroad, particularly on our own programs. The last bullet is hardly that innovative nowadays. I don't think there's a single private liberal arts college today that does not apply financial aid to students going abroad. One thing I would add to that, which is certainly, again, a critical component of Pitzer's commitment to study abroad, is that no student should ever have to choose not to go abroad because of financial issues. A combination of financial aid, of fellowships, and various other pots of fellowship or endowed funds make it possible for all students to go abroad. So I urge you, if your child or daughter, son feels like this may not be feasible given the added cost to you all, please assure them that that really should not be the case. And we encourage them to come and talk to us about that. And I'll talk a little bit more about coming to see us in a minute. And this is the second site, one of our programs. I'll give you a clue. It's not Italy, but that's all I'll say on that one. Okay. Okay. I am not, of course, going to spend any time going through all these countries. I'd bore you all stiff. And of course, there's probably 2 countries you're more interested in this list than any others, so I won't go rambling through them all. I should say, of course, in many of these countries, we may have more than one program. So it's not that it's limited to 40 countries. The number of programs is far bigger than that. And I should also note that, of course, this list is comprehensive insofar as it includes both our own direct run programs, which I'll give you some clue, are in the following countries: Botswana, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Italy, Nepal, South Africa and Zimbabwe, Brazil and Vietnam. I think I got that. I can again look on the caption note below and see if I got it correct. And so, but then in addition, we have multiple other types of programs, whether that be third party, in other words, we're working with a study abroad provider, or as in the case of Pitzer, we have a pretty vibrant number of bilateral exchanges with universities around the world. This is something also that markedly differs from our other sister colleges at Claremont. One, insofar as we run our own programs around the world, and indeed we will have Pomona, Harvey Mudd, Scripps students on our programs from time to time. But in addition, unlike the other, our sisters at Claremont, we have a vibrant international exchange program, so that we do accept students from our partners around the world for a semester and up to an academic year, which is something that our sisters don't do. Of course, the one huge advantage in our opinion of that is that it really increases diversity of our international student body. And while our matriculated international student numbers are very healthy, and Todd can talk more about that, and it's always on we hope on an upward growth trajectory, it's an added bonus to have these visiting international students who, as you look at that list in front of you, can tell are coming from a pretty diverse series of areas around the world. So that's certainly something, one of the main reasons why we initiated an exchange program policy about 10, 15 years ago. But again, I'm not here to talk about each one in question. If there's a country there that fascinates you and you go to, well, what in God's name do you do there? I'm more than happy to talk more about it in the Q&A or offline on an email or whatever. Okay, let me just quickly go through these. Backing up a second, this is one of the trickier ones. Hopefully, I don't know if anyone's coming in with good guesses on these, Jill. Again, this is one of our direct run programs. I'll go back over them at the end. Okay, I somewhat alluded to this a minute ago, but what does study abroad mean? And it's certainly not to simply duplicate what you can do here. You hopefully have noticed, although I am deeply aware as an academic advisor that students and parents find this week particularly stressful as your children are trying to get into classes. And let me assure you, having done this for 15 years, this is a common occurrence, even in a pandemic, where students are stressed, trying to get into classes this week. I can assure you that things will all settle down. When the dust settles, there'll be courses added. And while I understand very much so that this week can be stressful for you and your children as they're trying to figure out the course load, be assured that they will figure this out with their advisor by the time classes start. But on that note, I mean, while it may be frustrating for you and your students this week, the Claremont colleges I think can justifiably argue that it has the most comprehensive array of liberal arts courses available to any liberal arts college student in the country by virtue of our consortium. And so I don't think there's any real argument undermining that. So what I mean by this is that there's such an extraordinary array of courses available in Claremont that we hope that our students don't simply try and replicate what they could do in Claremont when they're in Brazil or Vietnam or Germany or whatever. You know, we really encourage them to explore their interests that have a very global component, and not simply take that econ course that you could very successfully take with a bunch of superb economists here in Claremont. The next two might seem somewhat counterintuitive. Certainly getting away, we don't want to encourage students when we want that choice to be always focused on the constructive and the positive. So while I completely understand that after a couple of years, sometimes students feel, now I need to get out. I really need to get away from Claremont. That's perfectly rational and understandable, but we don't want study abroad to become that escape hatch. We want students to embrace it and see it as a positive part of their college education. So taking breaks is somewhat similar. Travel does seem counterintuitive. We don't want you to travel, but we want you to study abroad. Well, what we mean by that is, of course, you're going to invariably have to, in most cases, get on a plane, which, of course, is another issue around climate change, that it becomes a deeply conflicting one for all of us in the field of international education. But with regard to travel, what we mean by this is that we don't want students dipping into a culture. In a student semester, we want them to really engage closely and profoundly with that host culture. Some of you have probably surmised from at times my accent goes and you realize I'm actually from Europe. And if there's one downside to Europe, of course, pre-pandemic, is one's ability to jump across from country to country for very low cost and very, very easily. So certainly when students are abroad, we don't want them flitting around. We ideally want them to really engage with that culture. And that in many ways comes from living with a host family or some other thing I'll talk about in a minute. And clue on this one, this is not Botswana, this photo. That's my big clue there. Okay. Okay, so intercultural understanding is really at the core of the global focus at Pitzer College. And I loathe people who read from a PowerPoint, because I always think, well, most people are capable of reading themselves, but I will read this very short note. So intercultural understanding must be obtained through experience, through a deep, intellectually rigorous engagement with another culture and language. And that certainly, I think, echoes what I just said. There's, as many of you perhaps have noticed, and it is perhaps surprising to you, is that Pitzer College, while it has a profound focus on global education, does not, unlike many of its sister colleges, actually require language, a foreign language as part of graduation. In lieu of that, certainly we expect and hope that our students will gain a level of fluency on a study abroad program that in many ways can replicate or be far greater than even taking a series of courses here at Claremont. It's always blows me away each year to listen to the students who studied in our Nepal program. My colleague who actually founded and directed the program for years is in our office, and he speaks fluent Nepali. And it's quite extraordinary to hear all these students piling into our office, yapping away with my colleague in fluent Nepali. These are students who all got off the plane in Kathmandu with not a single word and come back 4.5 months later, pretty much fluent as a result of this deep focus on language acquisition. And they're out there in month 3 conducting research projects in the Himalayas and doing so in Nepali, which is quite a testament to the program. It's not uncommon for students to come into our office, and maybe you've heard it yourself from your child, oh, I'm terrible at foreign languages, I'm not going to take one because I'm never very good at it. We don't buy that. I'm not sure if anyone, there may be some people because of the way whatever is going on, they just don't acquire languages easily. 99% of cases, that's just not the case. It's really about the environment in which you learn that language. And of course, immersion pretty much doesn't give students a choice. And as a result, the level of fluency can be quite extraordinary. This is, I'll give you a clue, this is actually our outdoor classroom, and I'm going to give this one away. You can put is in the jungle. So this is actually our outdoor classroom in Costa Rica. As some of you may know, Pitzer was very fortunate about 15 years ago to be bequeathed a large jungle field station on the Pacific coast of Costa Rica. And we are currently working on reopening the field station. It, of course, has been running as a field station for the last year and a half, but students have not been on the property. But we're hoping that that will be changing pretty quickly. Indeed, we're hoping, and we will be sharing information with all of your students on this. We are exploring the possibility of running some winter intersessions if global health allows. We tried it last winter and then had to pull the plug for obvious reasons. We're tentatively optimistic that we could do something this winter. So if you, so our students may be able to actually be abroad this winter as well. And just to finish up, you know, again, these are some of, I'm giving you such a brief overview, and this is nothing like, you know, we do info sessions for our students before they come and see us one-on-one. Excuse me, and rest assured they're getting far more information than I'm disseminating here today. But these are some of the kind of core approaches that we have, and something I think shared by faculty as well, in terms of what we consider an ideal study abroad type experience. Obviously, good prep before you go. That, of course, may be language in some cases, or it may be more disciplinary specific training. For example, you know, taking course in environmental analysis before you go abroad to apply that type of learning there. Homestays are very much central to the Pitzer study abroad philosophy. Homestays come under, for those of you who are in the field of global education may be aware that, you know, homestays are critiqued, and there are, you know, international education scholars who question their efficacy. I don't buy that critique insofar as it's very important how you define what a homestay is. Homestays for Pitzer is not bed and board. Our host families are oriented, are very much part of the academic program. They're invited to attend lectures and seminars. Our directors check in regularly with our host families, so they see themselves as very much integral to their students' education. To give you a good example, if they were doing a seminar on public health in the class that morning, probably their homework for students will be to go home and discuss public health with their host family and how it actually works out at the local level for their family. What does it mean when you get sick? What kind of resources are available? So it's very much about engaging closely. Our host families are co-educators, irrespective of whether they have a PhD or they didn't finish high school. Their roles as co-educators never should be underestimated. With all of our programs, we require students to take a core course with our our directors on site, which serves as a kind of broader overview of key social, cultural, economic, political issues in the area, in the country, to give students a kind of broader grounding. Writing is very much a key part as well. There's a lot of discussion for those of you in the field of higher education. You know that the mantra, and again, I'm pretending, I find myself speaking away as if nothing has happened in the last 18 years or 18 months, and just talking as if, but certain, you know, core educational beliefs still stay irrespective of COVID. And we, in the field of higher education, certainly this issue of direct assessment is such a key component. How do you actually demonstrate that your students learned something? It's not enough to just interview or ask the students for their self-reflection. Of course, we do that. We have expansive program and course evaluations, both in Claremont and with our programs abroad. But that, of course, is indirect assessment. It can't, you know, there's bias coming from the student. So writing is one of the key ways in which you can analyze ways in which students are actually acquiring these learning goals that we all hope they get. And most broadly, I think, well, what are those learning goals? Most broadly, our learning goals with study abroad is for students to begin to have deep empathy for the culture in which they are living, so that they start to see issues and events through the eyes of the host culture. Don't get me wrong, we realize that's not as straightforward as it sounds, and it's a constant journey, and I'm not sure if anyone becomes a truly ethno-relative in their lifestyles, but that's the goal that we're hoping that students are moving towards, from ethnocentricity to ethno-relativism. It's a rather broad and vague concept, but it's one that we hold very dearly here at Pitzer. Pitzer programs, what also makes them cool is they allow for all kinds of alternative learning, whether that's research projects. All of our direct study abroad programs have required internship or service learning projects, which means that students can usually meet two of their graduation requirements when they go abroad in our programs, namely the Intercultural Global, but also the social responsibility praxis requirement, because they are actually in the community doing, whether it's research or service learning or some kind of internship program. I should note as an aside, I forgot to mention this earlier, and then I promise I'm nearly finished, that for the last year and a half, what our directors abroad have been doing, and it has been successful, is offering virtual internships around the world. So for the last year, students have been doing internships virtually with organizations in our host sites. For example, one that I saw the presentations from all the students in the spring was students interning at a Native American school in Quito, Ecuador, working with the Quechua speaking community, which Quechua being the largest minority community in Ecuador. A lot of other students have done more traditional type research with NGOs, public policy organizations, but those courses in FYI are again being offered this semester. If your children have an interest in this, I feel free, they should contact our office. We still have some slots. Of course, they can never replicate for the quote unquote the real thing. And we're not claiming that this isn't some goal to replace all of our study abroad sites with a virtual platform. It's of course based on necessity. And that said, we have seen how these virtual internship programs have actually been very successful. So for students who for whatever reason may not be able to go abroad in the coming years, we're hoping to offer these courses in some way moving forward, even after the devastation of this pandemic starts to dissipate. And lastly, of course, we, as I mentioned on many occasions, you know, this study abroad is not something above and beyond your Pitzer College experience. It's an integral part of your overall degree. You know, so students will work very closely with advisors in my office and with their individual academic advisor to plan their study abroad. And so it actually fits in with their overall learning goals and to their major, their professional goals, their grad school goals, or whatever they might be. I think that's where I wanted to end. Yes, I'm going to stop sharing. I will do one more thing before I pass it over to Todd, which is I now will go back and give you the answers. Anyone, Jill, does that, oh, let me share, sorry. I forgot to share. Let me do this. Jill, did you get any answers in from anyone? Anyone get this one correct? You're muted, Jill.
No, I don't think so. Our audience, I think, was a little shy on that.
Oh no.
So.
Okay, come on, how can you be shy? I can't even see you. I can't even see your names.
And I felt like
that you have the best defense out there. And this is for those, this is Nepal. This is our very first program. That is Annapurna in the distance. This is near one of our hill villages, Tanting, which I actually had the great honor of pleasure going to about 7 or 8 years ago. Our students, when they're in Nepal, spend 2 lengthy séjours, 2 to 3 weeks long, in 2 hill villages in the Himalayas, both with different ethnic groups. So this village is a Gorang village. The other village where students stay is a Sherpa village, which, as you know, I'm sure most of you have heard of the Sherpa community, as they've been so heavily involved in the Kathmandu, in Everest expeditions. The next one was Botswana. This is Okavango Delta in the north of Botswana. This is Quito, the capital of Ecuador, a stunning, stunning city. Has, I think, has the largest preserved Spanish colonial historic city in the world, as far as I know. Very beautiful. This one is Salvador, Bahia, Brazil, the 3rd city of Brazil, and a truly, as many of you may know, this is the unofficial Black capital of Brazil. And sadly, for a lot of dark, more depressing reasons, because Bahia, Salvador, was the center of the Brazilian slave trade. But today, our partners in Bahia our main partner there is the Steve Biko Institute, which many of you of my age will remember. Steve Biko was perhaps equally famous as Mandela, except the poor man was murdered during the apartheid region. But Steve Biko is this organization in Salvador, Brazil, which works with the Black majority community, who are nonetheless, while a majority, still deeply underrepresented in universities, etc. So we work, that's our partner there. This is Parma, Italy, home of the cheese and the ham. And possibly, for those of you who don't know, one of the most one of the real hidden treasures of Italy. It's not a big tourist town for foreigners who will plow into the squares of Florence, Pisa, Venice, whereupon you can't see anything for all the tourists in front of you. Parma has virtually no tourists. If you're in Italy, couldn't recommend it enough, and is arguably the culinary capital of Italy too. As I mentioned before, that's our outdoor classroom at our field station in Costa Rica. And last but not least, you can probably guess that this is East Asia, and this is not the gates to Pitzer College, but the city gates to the Imperial Palace of Hue in central Vietnam. For those of you who know Vietnam, this was the former capital, and that's where we cited our program, in large part because Hanoi and Saigon have become so enormous and polluted that we focus on the small, very beautiful city in the center of Vietnam. The downside being, and I speak from experience, I know Vietnam very well, I lived there for many years, the downside being that it's a summer program and summer temperatures in Hue are hot. Our California students never quite get used to getting off the plane and being hit by this brick wall of humidity, which they're not quite used to in LA. But anyhow, that's my little geography test and quiz. I suspect you'll be giving out massively valuable big cash prizes for the winners of that. And at this point, I'm going to stop and hand it over to Todd, who's going to talk more about the inbound international students. And one thing I did want to say before Todd speaks, which I think is, again, a tribute to Pitzer, and something that baffles us all in 2021 that more colleges aren't doing is that our study abroad and international program office are one and the same thing. We all work together, and that's not common. If you look at most universities and colleges, international students are usually under the Dean of Students office, and study abroad is traditionally under the provost of the Dean of Faculty's office. We merged those two, and we think it makes so much sense. The issues that our international students face here in Claremont mirror so closely the kind of issues our students face abroad. And it, that the rich discourse that takes place in our office, because we're dealing with both student cohorts, is, to me, seems like a no-brainer, but that's just me. Anyhow, thank you, and I look forward to your questions. And Todd.
Hi, good morning all. I'm Todd Sasaki, the Director of International Programs, and it's great to be able to talk to you today. And before I forget, I wanted to note too that our first our study abroad student, our first one for this year, is actually an international student as well. And so that's great that they are, even though they're in effect doing a 4-year study abroad here, we still encourage them, and many of them do take advantage of the study abroad program themselves to go to other regions or other places to continue and study and study abroad. So I have been at Pitzer since 2002, so it's been nice to see a real change and shift in international education in terms of working with how the number of international students that Pitzer has. And so I work with all the incoming international students. And it's grown a lot. I can remember having 8 new students for international students in a first year class, and that was a bumper crop. So these past few years, not last year notwithstanding, we've been about 25 to 30 new students each year, international students, and these are visa holding international students. So we have about this year, it's about 100 international students, visa holding students on campus, which is about 7 to 8% of the population. We were close to 10 pre-pandemic, and I think we'll be back up there in a year or two as well, if things continue as they did this year. And so the majority of those are the 4-year matriculated students who are going to get a degree at Pitzer. But as Michael had mentioned, we also have a strong exchange program where students will come for a semester or an academic year. And that's anywhere from 20 to 30 each semester. But between the two, each semester, we'll have students from all 6 inhabitable continents in the world. So that's it's really a chance to have a number of different people from all over the world with different experiences and outlooks and things to contribute to the community. I'll say also too that there's another growing population of students. I deal mainly with the visa holding ones, partially because I help with those documents and things, but there are a number of members of the international community who don't need visas. They can be dual citizens of the US and another country, green card holders, even students who have spent a considerable time growing up abroad, whether it's in high school or just perhaps their parents work, third culture kids, the TCKs, they call them sometimes too. And so that's a growing population that we welcome as part of the international community, because they are international, and hope to support them as well and link them into activities that are going on, programming that's happening, but most importantly, just with other students that have had a similar background or can relate to some of their experiences as growing up not in the US or spending a lot of time outside the US. It's a bit harder to kind of track those down because there's not necessarily a box you can tick on that, but that says, yes, I'm one of these global citizens. But they do manage to find their way to us, and we're happy to help and support them as well too. And So this year is we're happy to have several students here. Many have come already. A large number of them just completed their quarantine yesterday and have been vaccinated. Many others have already been vaccinated and are coming in. And we'll be having an international student orientation, specifically Pitzer one for the first time since I've been here, on Friday and Saturday, actually. So I'm looking forward to seeing students on campus. Some of the students from last year too that I've only known virtually through Zoom or through emails. And to be able to see them on campus is great. And I think they add a lot to the community and the Pitzer community, both in terms of students as well as staff and faculty. Some of the things that of course, I work with them and support them on immigration matters for documents and things, but I think another, perhaps equally large amount of time is spent helping them with cultural adjustments, not only just socially, but academically, and then as well as accessing resources that Pitzer has, and kind of just helping them connect to the larger Pitzer community, both in all those different ways, socially, academically, and in terms of support as well. As you know, Pitzer really values international and intercultural education, and study abroad is a great way to engage in that too. But I think there's equally important and accessible opportunities by engaging and meeting with our international population here, and it can help students who aren't able to get abroad for different reasons, to help prepare them for going abroad. And when they come back, oftentimes, I think a lot of our students want to keep that sort of international engagement, some sort of global engagement going, and are looking for ways to do that, and connecting them with our international community that's already here is a good way to do that, and perhaps they sometimes have a better understanding of what our students are going through or doing. And so so I welcome any questions or comments about our international student population. We do look for different ways to involve them, we have programming of our own, some of it, but a lot of it is student driven and student based. I work with the Pitzer International Student Association, and a lot of that too is not only to provide some support internally for that community, but also to reach out to connect with the larger Pitzer community and share their experiences with the others too. So again, if there's any questions, if you have students, if I have any international parents out there, welcome, and thank you if it's a different time zone, I really appreciate. This past year has taught me a lot about adjusting and helping to, as our students have had to sometimes flip their schedules, to adjust mine as well, to try to connect and support them too. So thank you. And I guess we've got some questions in the Q&A, so let's go ahead and address those.
Great. Would you like me to pose them to you, or would you like to read them and respond?
They seem to be pretty straight. I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, that's fine.
Let me see. Mostly seem to be study abroad for the moment. So does involvement in Pomona Pitzer. I love it. Pomona. Anything we can get any dig on our sister college. I love it. I'm going to keep that one. Pomona. Sorry, I'm tongue in cheek. My student athletes not participate. Your student athletes coach is absolutely incorrect. And I would love to know who your student athletes coach is off the record, because, well, no, academics always come first at the Claremont colleges. And if a student coach is dissuading a student from pursuing an academic opportunity, I and the dean will get involved in that. The quick answer is we've had many students do study abroad who are in the athletics programs. Yes, certain semesters may not work. I have a number of advisees this semester who are on the football team, as in your football, not mine, American football. and they're swamped in the fall semester. So junior is, or spring is certainly going to be more viable. We have a number. What I didn't mention is our Brazil, Vietnam, and one of our Costa Rica programs are actually intensive summer programs. But the quick observation is that a student, that's a deep concern to me personally, if a student coach is strongly recommending not participating. That's not the case. And the colleges are very, very consistent. And I've never, don't get me wrong, this isn't a bash on Pomona Pitzer Athletics. They're great to work with. It might be some confusion, but yes, absolutely can study abroad. How many semesters, summer? I know one dear former advisee who studied abroad 4 times. She did the following. She studied abroad twice in the semester, and she did 2 summer programs. Typically, you can study abroad for full academic year. For example, we have some programs that only go for a year. For example, our program at Oxford University, in collaboration with Sarah Lawrence, is a 1-year program. Most students go for a semester. And again, and students who have more limitations on time, whatever, often choose to do our intensive summer option. When can students begin to study abroad, freshman, sophomore? We very, very occasionally will have a freshman go abroad in their spring semester of their first year. The vast majority of students go abroad in sophomore or junior years. We welcome sophomores. There is actual research that indicates that sophomores who go abroad actually graduate more, of higher rates of graduation and speed of graduation. I think people suspect, and I certainly suspect, that's partly because when students go abroad, it actually helps coalesce a lot of thoughts that they've had bouncing around in their head, so they actually have more focus when they come back. But students are welcome to come see. We will be, just so you know, reaching out to, if your students are first years, we will be reaching out to them this semester to come and to attend a info session, to come meet with us one-on-one. We will have multiple info sessions, both virtually, and we will have info sessions in tables and chairs outside our office. We have a nice advantage. Our office as a large patio under shade most of the day. So rest assured, your students, your children are welcome to talk to us tomorrow if they so choose. And I'll give you all an email before we go. Indeed, I'll send it out now. I drafted it earlier and I will send out the email now. And I'll send it. Why isn't it not going through? I don't know if it went through or not. Anyhow, okay, I think it just went through. Let me go back to the page. Sorry. My apologies. My laptop is working up. Okay, here we go. Was there other questions? Let me see. If your children are honest, when would you ready to come? Again, Mickey, I'd say today, certainly. Well, maybe not today, but soon. I mean, it's something that it's a dialogue, working with our students. It's not just, okay, here's where you should go. It's very much a dialogue with my office, with my apologies. I have dogs barking in the background, the wonders of Zoom from home. But working with their own academic advisor in their office sooner rather than later. Yes. I have a question. Well, never mind. Am I missing anything?
Yes. Okay. Do you mind if I ask a couple questions that I wondered about? Is just is it competitive, to get a spot in our programs, and to just talk about how students who've been there play a role in your office?
Sure. Quick answers. We never want to use the word guarantee because it's a slippery slope. But the assumption is that any student who's eligible to go will get to go on on their program of choice. Certainly with our direct run programs, Pitzer students will always get priority. We do allow non-Pitzer students in, but we would never turn down a Pitzer student to accept a non-Pitzer student. Sometimes with some of our exchanges, they may not necessarily be always able to go the semester they want. The exchanges, there's a kind of balance of trade. We're constantly juggling. We have no problem, rest assured, we don't care if that balance of trade gets out of sync. As long as it's not completely out of sync, we have no problem still sending students to a particular site. But in certain cases, if there's just too much imbalance, we sometimes have to defer a student semester. But in general, the assumption for Pitzer students is that if it's for an approved program, there shouldn't be any obvious reasons why they could not go. Students certainly students of the programs are very, very active in both orienting students. Any student who applies for any program is required to interview a fellow student to learn about their experiences on that program. That's a non-negotiable. For obvious reasons, it's not busy work. We want the student to be able to hear the perspective of their peer, what they loved, what they didn't like, what they would like to see improved. No one thing is perfect. We're constantly fine-tuning. But student evaluation, student feedback is so important to us.
We had one question that asked about the number of semesters or summers and additional expenses, just having missed that info.
Let me see. So certainly with semesters, if all students, if you're on financial aid, if your students are on financial aid, their financial aid will apply. It can sometimes take a little bit more complications with summer, but it still does apply. You can use financial aid over the summer as part of your package. It's, again, in terms of additional costs, that's true. Just full disclosure, yes, there is an additional $550 fee the college charges for if they're going abroad for travel expenses. If a student is in financial aid, again, that is waived. But in general, we do not envisage that it should not be the case that a study abroad experience is more expensive for a student, irrespective of whether on financial aid or not. All costs when in country will be covered, whether that means they have, a full meal plan with the host family, or they get a stipend to buy their own food or whatever. But there really should be, aside from pocket money, there should be all expenses are covered when students are abroad.
Well, we're close to our end time. So I do want to say what great, excellent information you shared today in the images. Just a lot of detail about the Pitzer program and this international student program, and the news that we do have students actually going abroad this fall is just really heartening. So thank you so very much. And as everyone can see, the email studyabroad@pitzer.edu is where you can reach either Michael or Todd. Again, their information is on our program description. So please feel free to reach out, everyone. And thank you so much to the audience, but also to both of you. It was really a great session. And so we'll give everybody a little half-hour break, and I hope you'll be able to join us at our last session today at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time about how the Pitzer community came together to support students, our college, and our core values during the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. It's moderated by Kamala Lee, who's in our annual giving office director, Sandy Vasquez, the Vice President of Student Affairs, Carolyn Moasesi. She's the parent from class of 20 on the Family Leadership Council, and Linda Kwan, parent of class of 22, also on the Family Leadership Council. So
I could, Jill, if I may add something, because which for those who are still here, which to me is something of that is profoundly positive about Pitzer College. Of course, this wouldn't, none of you will be aware of this, but obviously the last year and a half in our office has been chaotic and depressing at times. And as I noted earlier on, I said, we have staff and faculty around the world. They're Pitzer employees. The college throughout this pandemic, even though their jobs were very much circumvented, they were offering whatever they could, but all of our colleagues abroad throughout this nightmare have continued, thanks to the wisdom of our college, to receive full salary. And that was never, I proposed it early on, and the dean and the president from day one were supportive. And that's something of profound great. I am so grateful for that. It could have been so devastating to see long-term colleagues being laid off. And we know that happened in other colleges with smaller endowments than our own. So I think that I hope you as parents will take pride in the institution that your children are at for making that really key decision, which obviously allowed me to sleep much better at night, knowing that I didn't have to make that phone call or email to a dear colleague and fill in the blank. So kudos to Pitzer for making that really huge, momentous, and important decision.
thank you for that. That's awesome to hear how far those decisions reached. So thank you. Okay, so we'll thank you again, and thanks to our audience, and take care. See you again.
Please email us anything you want to ask. Take care. Enjoy your week.
Bye-bye.